Hey, I'm Mike Gilliam, and this is Let It Rip. We begin against the backdrop of a surge of coronavirus cases and a still contentious presidential election. The outgoing president refuses to accept the results of the election and the will of the people. He refuses to concede, even though President-elect Joe Biden is projected to be the winner of 306 electoral college votes and leads by more than 5 million in the popular vote. Biden flipped important states from red to blue, including Arizona and Georgia, and in the process helped to shift the focus now to Georgia and that state's two runoff Senate races that will determine whether Democrats or Republicans control the Senate. We're going to discuss all of it. Welcome to Let It Rip. What was once idle speculation has become reality. In the past, we've discussed what would happen if the current president lost and refused to go. Well, he lost, but he's refused to acknowledge defeat and allow the peaceful transition of power to begin. Instead, he's tweeted to his followers that he won the election while filing numerous lawsuits across the country and asking for recounts in an attempt to overturn the results. Rudy Giuliani has taken over the efforts to overturn the election in the courts and given memorable press conferences, including one with hair product streaming down the side of his face while pushing conspiracy theories with no evidence that the election was rigged. Trump has had no real success, and most experts agree Joe Biden will become the next president of the United States on Inauguration Day, January 20th. But there are major problems associated with the president's behavior and failure to embrace a peaceful transition. Vaccines that could save thousands of lives coming, which will largely happen on the new administration's watch. Joining me now to discuss all of it, we have the president of Black Lives Matter of Brooklyn, Anthony Beckford, from Atlanta, the founder of Organize to Mobilize, Antonio Lewis, and LaGuardia Community College student affairs educator, Kazembe Bat. Kazembe, let's start with you. Your reaction to the outgoing president's refusal to concede and begin a peaceful transition.
No one should be surprised that Trump is acting this way. I think it's reckless. I think that what he's doing is hurting not only people's lives vis-a-vis letting Biden have access to the information he needs to fight the virus, but also for American democracy long-term, because he's planting deep seeds of misunderstanding, of trust, of not believing in the system for what the system is worth. The system already has a lot of challenges, and for Trump to act this way, like former President Obama said, he's acting like a child. He would scold his children. Former President Obama said, if they acted this way, and that is a truthful analysis. I think it's outrageous what Trump is doing, but it's not to be unexpected.
Anthony, he's targeted areas with large Black and brown votes to challenge the results, and he's demonized Black Lives Matter. What's your reaction to his tactics in that area?
You know, it's about demonizing, criminalizing Black people, demonizing, criminalizing their movement in order to try to, diminish any type of representation or any progress that they have made or will make. You know, and also it gives it galvanizes his base. You know, because these are the same people who vote for him are the same people who think just like him. You know, and we have to come to the truth of that, whether they are of our same melanin or not. You know, it's a thought process, it's a belief, you know, it's a culture within themselves where it's always going to be anti-Black. So with him doing that, it's more of it's more of like the war tactics from, you know, white imperialism, you know, where it's okay, let me first launch a campaign verbally against you, you know, through leaflets, you know, through town halls. Now could do it through Twitter, you know, 140 characters, you know, and basically have millions of people believe him and run with it, you know. And it's time for us as a people to realize that we need to now take the initiative to actually counter these things right away instead of waiting to see how the effects will be after.
How concerned are you about what he's doing?
I'm very concerned, not only as being a Black man, you know, but being a Black father, you know, being a community leader, you know, being a part of the movement. You know, it's enough that we already are being demonized and criminalized, you know, by law enforcement, unions and so forth, and then to have the president do that and put a target on our backs even further. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I've had enough of that. But at the same time, I understand, where it's coming from and how to handle it. But the thing is that, everybody else isn't, and it's time for us to start organizing to actually protect ourselves. We have the saying in the movement, we keep us safe. So we have to actually enact that. We have to put that into practice, because at the end of the day, we're really all we have.
Antonio, you're down in Atlanta. Atlanta won Georgia for Biden. How are people reacting there?
Yeah, so we are excited to organize Biden. What we've understood is the entire time is that that Black folks are the soul of the country and the conscience of the country, and we are the ones that told them we wanted Biden because we understood we thought that only Biden could win in this election. As you see, 70 plus million people also voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump got more votes than anyone in the history of in American history other than Joe Biden. And so we always knew that the whistling and the catcalling that Donald Trump has done told us that the only person that America would elect right now was an older white man. So here in Atlanta, in Georgia, we stood up. In the whole South, if you think about South Carolina, when Joe Biden lost every other state, came to South Carolina, and Black folks in the church down there said, hey, we know that white folks in the South are not going to vote for anybody but Joe Biden. And so they stood up, and Joe Biden said he's going to select a Black woman to be on the side. So in Atlanta, we want to hold them accountable. And we're excited because we selected the person we wanted to elect, and we're excited that we turned Georgia blue, because there's always been this misconception that Georgia is a red state. And I know Stacey Abrams talked about us being a blue and confused state. And here's the thing, we're a voter suppressed state.
Yes.
And the last attempt at voter suppression backfired. The last attempt at voter suppression was a automatic voter registration law here in Georgia. We're the only state in the country other than Colorado. You never want to be on a list with Colorado if you plan to continue being a red state. We're the only state in the country where the Secretary of State on his own gave us automatic voter registration.
I want to come back to Atlanta in just a bit, but before we do that, Kazembe, let's talk just a little bit about what's been going on with the attempts to overturn this election. At this point, one of the states that they've gone after has been the state of Michigan, where Biden won by 150,000 votes. What do you make of this effort there to call legislators into the White House, to make calls to the state and try to get the results not to be certified, and all of that behavior?
As far as Michigan is concerned, and Trump, it's more outrageous. He attacked the governor who was under assault. People are coming after the governor. He's not man enough to even stand by her in that time of crisis. Detroit is in Michigan. It's racist for him to want to throw out the votes in Wayne County, or to have the Wayne County commissioner try to somehow overrule all of those Black votes. As a Black man, as a Black person, that tremendously upsets me. It's just more of the same. I mean, Trump, since he decided to run for presidency, coming down the escalator, calling Mexicans out their name, up until yesterday, allowing Giuliani to go out and put out the propaganda that he put out, the misinformation to confuse people. The fact that he would target a state like Michigan does not surprise me, because it's just like Georgia. It's a state where the Black vote is omnipresent. It makes a tremendous difference. So Trump has been an enemy for justice for all people, but especially Black people. And the fact that he's targeting Michigan and about to do Georgia, and we could even say Pennsylvania with our sisters and brothers in Philadelphia.
And Milwaukee.
Yes, it's not surprising. It's just him being his true self. As New Yorkers, CUNY TV, we know Giuliani and we know Trump. We know Trump from back with the Central Park jogger, now the exonerated five. We know what that man is about. So I'm not surprised, and I'm just glad that it's not going to work.
What about your students or students at LaGuardia? Are they feeling a bit let down by the system and what's transpired here?
My sense is that students are disappointed. A lot of students at LaGuardia are immigrants. And therefore the policies that he has had has been anti-immigrant. So I would say that the students in general are upset. The students that I'm actively engaged with now, including the student government, they do not like Trump. And they actively put together forums through Zoom and other forums, and they express that.
Good conversation. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss those key Senate races in Georgia and why New Yorkers should care. I'm Mike Gilliam, and this is Let It Rip.
You're watching CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Welcome back to Let It Rip. I'm Mike Gilliam. Well, all eyes are now on the state of Georgia as we look to see who's going to control the U.S. Senate. There are two runoff elections scheduled to take place on January 5th. Reverend Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, faces incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler in the race to fill the final 2 years of Loeffler's term. And a 6-year term is up for grabs in the race between incumbent Republican David Perdue and Democrat Jon Ossoff. Lots of money is going to be spent on this one, and a lot rides on it. Without those two seats, Republican Mitch McConnell would retain a majority in the Senate and could make things almost impossible for Biden to get his agenda passed. But if Democrats win both runoffs, we would have a 50-seat tie in the Senate, with Vice President Kamala Harris giving Democrats the edge as the tiebreaker. Now, this is very important to New Yorkers for many reasons, including funds the city desperately needs to fund everything from public safety to mass transit. It's been said if we don't get federal help in the form of cash to offset coronavirus losses to the economy, we can expect massive layoffs that would include cops, firefighters, even 9,000 MTA workers. MTA head Pat Foy has even written to vendors in Georgia to let them know they need stimulus money. And if Democrats lose, they lose. So this affects everyone in New York, Trump supporters and Biden supporters alike. Let's continue our discussion at this point. So, Antonia, are the people in Georgia aware that this affects people all over the country and what we're going through here?
One of the biggest things we have to do from across the country is tell voters in Georgia that their votes matter. We're dealing with the president, we're dealing with the governor, we're dealing with 100 years of voter suppression here. We also have to remember we are a blue state and we have the numbers to actually win. So it's all about turnout. And so right now, we are trying to encourage voters to let them know that the runoff is January 5th, but our request for the rest of the world is to come talk to us. We are asking for help. We're asking you to come down and knock on doors because no one's ever did it. The best way to win an election is to have people not even vote. And so here in Georgia, we just haven't shown up at the polls. So our request is that you treat us like we're Colorado. You treat us like we're a battleground state that we know we are. And you come and you tell folks here to actually go out and vote. And when you think about Reverend Warnock on the ballot, he's a Savannah, Chatham County guy. And he grew up there. And that's the key to winning Georgia. Chatham County, the census has it as only receiving 1,000 new folks, new people over the last 4 years, but their voter registration rose by 200,000 over the past 4. And those are voters that will support Reverend Warnock. So once again, it's a voter suppression state. It's all about turnout.
Mm-hmm. In the past, with runoff elections, the turnout has been rather low. And Republicans, including conservatives like Karl Rove, have been saying things like, Georgia's the last line of defense. So they're pitching it that way. And this race could bring in like $500 million. How do you get that across to people in Georgia that is so very important that they win that race and you make sure that turnout happens?
I think institutional knowledge. I think we have to talk to folks, organizers who are already on the ground. I think similar to how you would do in any other state, we came to New York. We want to talk to the New York organizers who've been doing it for the longest. And if you come here with $500 million and you talk to organizers on the ground who can actually turn people out, because the electorate is an intelligent electorate. We have an overload of information. Most of it is coming from the pulpit that our president sits in, telling us to not vote. So when you do come to Georgia with $500 million and you come on the ground, you have to trust these young Black boys, these young Black women in this city, this institutional knowledge that we have, and you have to stand beside us and behind us and not try to tell us what we want, because we told the country we wanted Joe Biden. We told the country we wanted a Black woman with him. We didn't care who it was, and he came down to the South and he told us he would give us that, and we handed him the presidency. He won it in South Carolina, and he won the presidency again in Arizona and Georgia. Trump is contesting in Philadelphia, and he's contesting in Philadelphia and Michigan, because those are the Rust Belt states that he thought Joe Biden had a chance in. So when you come down with your 500 million, the goal is that you stand with us and stand next to us and behind us, and let's win this race.
Okay. Anthony and Cass, I want to talk to you guys about that aspect of it. Anthony, we voted in New York. We pushed voter turnout here in New York. That part of it is done, and everything shifted to Atlanta. Are you guys done in Brooklyn with this race, or are you continuing to work?
Definitely. We're aligning with many organizations and even many political parties, like the Working Families Party, many groups like the DSA and other organizations, doing phone banking, text banking. We just sent over a whole lot of postcards, to Georgia. And then we also have people who have left from last week to be boots on the ground out there as well, same way they did when it came to Pennsylvania and Michigan and so forth. We're trying to make sure that this does become a large turnout in January. We want to show that we can bring out the vote, that we're aligning with our fellow community members, because it doesn't matter what state we're in, we're all community. We all have one agenda to put forward. We have one victory that we have to make sure that we secure, especially to get this agenda going, because we cannot have demands. I tell people this all the time. We can't have demands if we do not put people in place who will pressure or at least hold accountable to those demands. We know Trump is not the person that's gonna, oppose to our demands. Mr. McConnell is not gonna be the one to say, hold up, let's bring a vote out for these demands of Black people or underserved people. So we know we're gonna have to, bring Biden and Harris to task on this. But the way to do that is by actually securing the Senate for them, so that way we can move forward. We can, get into a state of repair. It doesn't mean that everything's gonna be all right for us after, but let's get there.
Cass, what about you? Do you see some ideas where people here can actually get involved in this thing in Georgia?
All roads lead to Georgia, and we need to encourage them to come out. There's been talk that Black folks don't come out in the second round, that they are historically stay home. Not this time. We've already turned the state blue, and we need to continue to come out. I'm just concerned, not really concerned. I would just encourage everyone to stay progressive and proud. Do not try to move slightly to the right in order to pick up, say, white votes. I think that Reverend Warnock and others and the other candidate has to run a progressive. It's the progressive side of the Democratic Party that led to the election of Biden and my analysis. And when we have to stay on the offensive. Republicans often get us on the defensive, answering questions, so we got to play catch up. Reverend Warnock, I don't know the man, but I know he's a good man from all that I've read about him. I've recently read that they're trying to tie him to a brother who his name, it might be Wells.
Jeremiah Wright, right?
Jeremiah Wright, yes. I had lunch with Jeremiah Wright among a few other people in New Orleans a couple of years ago. He's a good man. He was a good man when Obama ran for president. And so Reverend Warnock has an affiliation or association with him. Don't back up on that. Don't play defensive about that. Point out the contradictions with the Republicans. They're right-wing Chuan, I might be pronouncing it wrong, and the other type of connections that they have. So when they try to put us on the defensive, as they're trying to do with that particular issue and other issues, for example, socialism, defend the police. No one's running on defending the police. We want to reform the police and be clear about issues. The fact that when Obama was president, the Senate did not cooperate at all. That's how come Trump was able to get all of those openings to appoint judges across the country, because the Senate refused to confirm. There's nothing more important than winning these two elections. So what I do from Brooklyn is reach out to the folks that I know in Atlanta and in Georgia in general and tell them, don't back up, stay progressive and proud, and step forward. And whenever the Republicans try to put you on the defensive, turn it around. They need to be on the defensive. Look at their president. Look at the president right now. It's outrageous.
Kazembe, but one of the things you mentioned is opening there that Republicans have been trying to exploit, and that is this whole idea of progressives and socialism. They want to tag Democratic candidates with that socialism tag, and that turns off voters. Are you concerned about that? I know you said that progressives won the election, but there are some who believe that maybe that's not accurate, that the whole notion of defunding the police and some of the other initiatives actually hurt. How do you come down on that?
I would say people have to really articulate the issues. You know, socialism, and sometimes they go as far as to say communism, is a catch-all that means nothing in the American context. People want health care. People want the government to provide infrastructure and resources so that people have a better quality of life. Some would say that that's socialism. It's not
social security.
Yeah, right. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I would say, again, we have to articulate the issues, do not get put on the defensive unnecessarily. We know that the people want a better quality of life, and we know we elected Biden. The only way Biden can successfully succeed is if he has a Senate along with the House that'll work with him. And so it comes down to, do you want change? Instead of saying socialism, we should say, no, it's not socialism, it's change. Change for the better. That's what we're about.
So it's a messaging problem.
Yes, I would say it's the Republicans have done a better job messaging in the context of us having this discussion, because we should be better messaging the fact that we're not pushing socialism as, i.e. Karl Marx or something like that. We're just saying that we need the government to really be engaged and helping people to have a better quality of life. And if that means allocating resources, if that means raising taxes, because you have to have some money to pay for it, raising taxes on the rich, all of that is relevant and real and needs to be proudly articulated and not coming from a defensive position.
We're going to make that the last word here. Very good discussion, and on what is shaped up to be the second most important race this year, but still one of the most important in history, too. I want to thank our guests, the president of Black Lives Matter Brooklyn, Anthony Beckford, LaGuardia Community College student affairs educator, Jeffrey Kazembe Batts, and from Atlanta, the founder of Organize to Mobilize, Antonio Lewis. Thank you all. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'll have some final thoughts. I'm Mike Gilliam, and this is Let It Rip.
You're watching CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Welcome back to Let It Rip. I'm Mike Gilliam. Now for some final thoughts. After watching how the campaign, election, and the outgoing president's actions have played out and the silence from the Republican Party, it's very clear how important the two runoff elections in Georgia will be to the incoming Biden administration. So much rides on the next administration that will affect supporters of both parties and all Americans. First and foremost is, of course, the coronavirus pandemic and how quickly we as a nation can get it under control. We've been warned to expect very bad times this winter, and the surge is building. With the country and the Senate so divided, it's going to be extremely important that the Biden administration can get things through the Senate and not face the roadblocks that Mitch McConnell brought to bear on President Barack Obama and his administration. With the GOP going along with the outgoing president and refusing to acknowledge and support the new administration, how can one expect a smooth rollout of the new vaccines and that they will reach many of those who need them most in the Black and brown communities and our frontline workers? And what are the questions of police reform and racial injustice? That could all be held up without a Senate that will work with the incoming administration. So it will all continue, at least through the next election, January 5th in Georgia, and until the legal challenges are exhausted. Maybe then the country can move forward and we can try to fix the problems that are killing Americans and the economy. We'll be on it. I'm Mike Gilliam, and this is Let It Rip.